All right, Coach Torpey from High Point University. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last few years.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it.
I think that the best thing that we've done jumping into these interviews is just tell us how you got into coaching. So, where you started playing lacrosse, that opportunity or that decision to go into coaching as a profession, and what drove that.
Yeah, I was born in Buffalo, raised in Baltimore, and I was fortunate to have a high school coach, two high school coaches that were incredibly instrumental to me in terms of leading me down this path. And just the difference and the mentorship that they had in my life really allowed me to see this as something that I felt like I could have an impact with, So they had a great impact on my life, Mike Thomas and Brian Kelly. And I was fortunate enough to, be able to get into this profession right out of college. And every guy that I've worked for since, and all the guys that I've worked with as assistants, have all kind of helped me get to the point where I am right now. And just feel incredibly blessed to be able to have impact on guys to the point where I can help them grow as men, both on and off the field. It's been the most rewarding career. I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, I think a lot of us that get into this world feel the same way as we go through it. You started your playing career at Ohio State, and then from there you coached at the Division II, Division III level, then on to Denver, Dartmouth, High Point. So all very different places. Obviously, Ohio State's the big state school. It was a relatively new program when you were there. On to Denver, which is a private school out west. When lacrosse was not what it is today in Denver, but it was still kind of a non-hotbed area. And then Dartmouth, which is the polar opposite of Ohio State in terms of the Ivy League and being as strong as they get academically as a small private school, and then High Point. So I guess, what was it like at Ohio State, those different things you took away from each experience, because they were all very different?
Yeah, I think it's kind of made me a well-rounded coach. I mean, geographically, getting to know so many different coaches, both club and high school, in those areas has been just tremendous in terms of recruiting. And if you look at our roster, I think that reflects it. And then in terms of just the different schools, the small school, the kind of, in a city school, the, big state school, being able to have, all that stuff in my background, I think, again, has allowed me to, get to where I am today and just have perspective on a lot of different things. And just having seen so many different ends of the spectrum, it just, it gives you clarity in terms of, some of the things you have, some of the things you don't. I think a lot of guys, what happens is they either get in, at the bottom level, maybe a small Division III as a part-time assistant, they never get out of that mold and they end up going and doing something else, or they get into, a higher end Division I school. A lot of guys who are great players get, handed some really good opportunities out of college, and maybe they take some of that stuff for granted. But, I'm fortunate that I got into Division III. I got my hands dirty, having to go out and recruit tons and tons of guys, and trying our best to get even guys to campus, and having to explain, where our school was. And almost every kid you call was like, I've never heard of that before, to being blessed to get the opportunity to go to a place like the University of Denver and, Dartmouth that sell themselves. And then, getting High Point to that point as well, where people are like, oh yeah, I know High Point. You guys have had a lot of success over the last couple of years. And it's been nice. I mean, it's been a long road, but every step along the way, I've learned something, and I've gotten to know new people, and it's been a really fun journey, honestly.
I think stay on that tone, because that was all basically leading up to High Point and what you've learned. But you started lacrosse at High Point. You're the first coach in history. There had to be a ton of lessons along the way there. So I guess, what was that process like, starting at High Point, starting the program, not even playing that first year? I guess talk us through that process of day one in the office. We're building this thing from scratch to where you are today.
Man, we could sit here and do this for like an hour and a half to go through the high points. But the first day in the office, I'll never forget. I drove down from Hanover, New Hampshire. It was, I don't even know, man, maybe a 17-hour drive. I think I stopped at my parents' house, a couple of times along the way to visit friends. And I got down here, and I had no idea, what I was selling by being the head coach at High Point University. I knew it was a beautiful campus, great education. The school was supporting it the right way. But I'll never forget the first day I was here. I must have met with like 25 guys, I think it was, from 7 o'clock in the morning till like 9 o'clock at night, like just hoping that like one of them would commit to the school. And most of the guys had come in the night before, had been there for a couple of days. A lot of them had already met with our athletic director. They've gotten campus tours through the admissions office. And so, the first guy that sits down is like, I'm coming. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Second guy, I'm coming. Third guy, I'm coming. The fourth guy, I'm like, oh my God, this is a lot better than I thought it was. I better like pump the brakes here. And a lot of the guys were guys, you know, that we still kind of gravitate toward. They were guys that, you know, were a little late to the recruiting process, you know, normal bloomers, late bloomers, whatever you want to call them, but guys that, you know, were maybe passed by different people based on where they were geographically, or, you know, the fact that they weren't, you know, at a lacrosse hotbed school. And, you know, it's kind of been our MO since day one to find those guys and, you know, put together a system of development that allows those guys to grow both as people, as students, and as athletes, and watch them kind of flourish. And, you know, it's been a really cool journey. And I think the neatest thing about High Point that I can say to anybody is every single day that I've been here has been better than the day before. And we've always been able to, you know, find some way to adapt and change and make this program better, both the guys in the locker room and the coaching staff.
What were the 2 or 3 things you didn't, or maybe not even 2, maybe 1 or 2 that you were doing this for the first time, you're building a program. So what were those 2 or 3 things that you just did not expect or you weren't prepared for, or that caught you off guard?
That's a great question, man. You know, I think the biggest thing for me was it was the first time I was a head coach. So to that point in my career, almost everything that I did, I felt like I was, you know, getting it approved before I would send it out. And I'll never forget the first time I went to send out an email to our team. I sent it to our athletic director, and he said, listen, man, I hired you because I believe in you. Like, don't do this every time you're sending something out to the guys. So I think it was just like the maturation of, you know, an assistant, associate head coach to a head coach, and just finally having your own program. You know, that was the biggest step for me. It was not getting things approved, you know, and not having to feel like, you know, every single thing that I did was being analyzed and watched and broken down and micromanaged. And I've tried to like instill that in our staff. You know, I love sitting down with my staff. There maybe nothing more as a coach than sitting down with my staff and just talking and figuring things out, and then letting those guys kind of run with their ideas, the ideas that we've come together and kind of created, and watch those guys hand that off, and then watch the guys they hand that off to give that to somebody else. It's incredibly rewarding, as you know yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been fun to watch you build it. Like I said, I think empowering the guys that work for you goes a long way, and it shows with obviously the success you've had. Those guys have gone on to do great things on their own individually, and the team's obviously had a ton of success. Flipping a little bit over to the current situation. So obviously your season was disrupted by coronavirus, COVID-19. We're kind of all in this odd situation. What does this look like for you guys? So what was that day like when you found out the season was going to be canceled? And then how have you treated that time since? So now we're on the other side of Memorial Day and it gets a little bit easier, but everybody kind of took their own approach to interacting with their guys. What was that like for High Point?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of, I hate to say it, but we were with the guys the day before. We were on spring break and we were bowling with the team right down the street in Greensboro. And, you know, you got word that the Ivy League was shutting it down. At that point, you're holding on to any sort of hope that you can. And, you know, it started to come to fruition that day, man. It's one of those days like you'll never forget, because you just kept hearing things. And, you know, we were finding out stuff almost after the guys were. You know, we're sitting here trying to work, put together practice plans, prepare for a game that was going to happen in 2 days against VMI, our first conference game. And you're getting, you know, texts from your guys and calls from your guys. Coach, I just heard this. Coach, I just heard that. And the SoCon was one of the last leagues to say, you know, we're done, because I think they wanted to hold on to that hope that there was going to be a championship season, even if there was going to be an NCAA tournament. So, you know, when we finally got word from our athletic director, we went into the locker room, had the guys come back, and it was like anybody's locker room would be. I think, you know, when you have a great team and your guys love each other as much as our guys do, anytime it's the end, you know, the last time those guys are going to see each other, the last time those guys are going to be together, maybe forever, you know, as a unit, it's emotional, you know. And our guys, I was upset, you know, I was brought to tears. Our whole staff was brought to tears. Our trainer was, our you know, strength and conditioning, everybody was in there just upset. The guys like didn't know what to do. And, you know, so we basically just said our piece about the seniors. We had those guys get up and say a few words. And then we had the guys sitting in front of them, the underclassmen, you know, just kind of talk about their impact on the program. And that was kind of it, you know. And moving forward where we are right now, you know, we've spoken about it. There's still a lot of questions in the air. I mean, I remember talking to Andy Shea when all this went down, him being the first, one of the first coaches to get word that their season was canceled. And he told me, he's like, you're going to feel like the worst leader in the world because you have no plan. You have no idea what's next. And I still feel that way. We're still trying to figure out the fall. We're still trying to, put a schedule together and 4 or 5 different variations of the schedule that we're going to have going into the fall. So, yeah, it's gotten better, with time, like anything. Time heals all wounds, but I still miss our guys, man. I still wish we could have taken care of some unfinished business and what we wouldn't do to get back in the locker room for a day just to get out there and practice with those guys.
Yeah, and it's never, no team's ever the same, right? You can have the same group of people, but the chemistry, like the feel is always different. And part of that, I guess, is you have the potential to have the same team, though it's unlikely next year with all these guys getting an extra year of eligibility from the NCAA. So what's going to be the impact for your guys in 2021 and then beyond for the team that's at High Point now?
Yeah, the beyond is something that we're kind of like allowing the guys to kind of make decisions in their own time. I don't think there's any sort of, crunch to that right now. We're letting the guys decide what they want to do in terms of grad school. I mean, I would love to have all the guys back, but with the 2021 season, we've got 2 guys returning, and then we have another 5th year coming in from another school that we're excited about. And then we have just one other transfer who's an underclassman coming in from all the situation that happened down in Furman. But, my thing was this, we had a lot of guys that I think were interested in coming back. The university was incredibly generous in terms of honoring scholarships and saying, we'll help with getting these guys back to school with a master's program that they had essentially, given them the option to take at a discounted rate. But a lot of our guys had job opportunities. And like we were speaking about, like I felt like in the current job market, where those guys were and not knowing what was to lie ahead. I said, listen, if you have a job opportunity right now and your company is willing to, continue to bring you in and let you have that job, you might just want to take that, So it was a tough conversation because a lot of those guys that I think would be interested in coming back would have impacted us and helped us on the field. But, I wanted to do what was in their best interest because a lot of those guys had job opportunities as early as, October, November, December of their senior year.
It's that, like, and as a college coach, your goal at the end of the day, I mean, lacrosse is great, but it's to get these guys jobs, to help them grow as young men. It's that blessing in disguise. Like, you try so hard to make sure all your seniors are graduating and going into a good situation post college, but now it's one situation of like, crap, if they didn't have anything going on, well, they'd probably be back here.
100%, man. I mean, I feel like any great coach wants their guys to get the opportunity they want in the geographic location where they want to work. And, we've been very fortunate to have that happen with all of our guys through, great relationships with guys like you. I mean, we've had conversations about guys, working in finance. It's, parents, it's people that we've, whose sons we've coached over the years. It's, anybody and everybody that has a kind of an eye on our program and knows what we do and how we do things. They love having our guys be a part of their organization. So it's double-edged sword. Obviously you want those guys to get into the workforce, but man, you'd love to have them back for another year.
Yeah, absolutely. The next part of that is the recruiting process. So everyone in the whole world, in the lacrosse world, freaked out that the 21s or 22s or 23s are going to be impacted by this year of eligibility. So you obviously have the COVID impact pushing things outside this summer, and the fall is going to look a lot different than what we're used to. But how do you anticipate that extra year of eligibility impacting the recruiting process for whether it be the 21s, 22s, 23s, and over the next 4 or 5 years as it plays out?
Honestly, Ron, I think it's like any question that pertains to recruiting. It's so school by school. You're going to have some schools that don't offer graduate programs that aren't going to be able to do anything with their 5th-year guys, and it's going to be status quo. You're going to have other places that, will go after everybody and anybody, in terms of, being able to bring guys back or get 5th-year transfers from other schools and offer them, great scholarship packages. So I think it depends. I mean, it really does. I think if you're talking about maybe the ACC, Big Ten schools that are probably going to have, first right of refusal for the best players in the Patriot League that can't go to graduate school, or the best guys in the Ivy League, and almost treat those schools as like prep years, where those guys play and then they get one extra year to play, at that level. You're going to see some guys take that opportunity. Why wouldn't you? But I think I don't think it's going to change like that dramatically. I just don't. I think there's going to be those guys that want to come back, and I think there's going to be a majority of guys that just want to go into the workforce and get into the real world. Like you, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, man, I wish I would have left college early. I think the majority of people that we know that we played with would say, man, I would do anything to go back and play. But, as a 21, 22-year-old kid, sometimes you're just so excited about the future that, you just move on.
Yeah, it's what's next. And then there's always the aspect, and you kind of said it, there's only so much money, and we'll get into this, but college is expensive, and those guys have to make the decision of, do they want to do that, like the cost benefit of playing that extra year versus paying for that extra year and passing up the job or pushing off a job. So I think a lot of us are in the same boat of like, there's so much to be determined with all of this. We stay on that same topic with recruiting. Walk us through how you guys approach recruiting. So I think in general, you guys recruit a little bit later, which I think is a positive, and you guys have really benefited from it. But what is that first day like when you guys start to discuss the recruiting process? So what would be the 22s now, through visits, building your list, depth charts, kind of into the offer stage and beyond?
Yeah, it's kind of gathering information, I think, right now. But typical recruiting, if you're going back like last summer, the summer before, it's going out, it's evaluating guys, it's kind of going into the summer with specific needs. What do we want? What are we looking for? And I mean, at the heart of all of our recruiting, it's bringing in great parents, that are bought into the ideals of our program, and knowing that their kids are going to be byproducts of the way they've raised them. So you sit here and you have conversations with kids in the recruiting process, and you might be fortunate to get 20 words out of a 17-year-old during a 2-day visit where you're interacting with their parents the entire time. And as well as I do, I think what's more important right now than maybe anything, including video, is your ability to trust the people who coach these kids. So for me, there's a lot of guys out there that are, very good at getting kids recruited, but those guys might not make it in your program. And you tend not to trust those people as much, when you're making blind decisions. But, I look at a guy like you, and every conversation we've ever had about a kid has always been both negative and positive. Some of the things they do well, some of the things they need to work on. And you've always been a great advocate to our program because you're authentic and you speak the truth, So I think in this day and age, with the current state of recruiting, the film is going to be incredibly important to us, and that ability to be able to sit down and watch film as a staff and not miss anything and almost get, every little bit of information on the guy is going to be huge. But it's also going to be those conversations that you're not going to have the opportunity to have on campus. It's going to be, hey, Ryan, what do you think of this guy? What's his family like? What's his situation? Is he one of the hardest working kids in the program? Is this a guy you need to push? What kind of guy is this? And, for us, I think any college coach, whether it's Division I, II, III, MCLA, they're great evaluators. They can find the best guys on the field. But we really pride ourselves on not only finding those guys, but the guys behind them and the guys that we think can develop into, maybe even a better version of those guys with, putting in a little extra work. And like I said before, we're very geographically diverse. We've got guys from all over the place, from all kinds of different programs. And, it's almost like it gets to be a situation where when that young man comes to campus, or, now with this, just a conversation like this that we'd have with them or their coach, you want to find out, are they a worker? Are they a good student? Are they going to make great decisions socially? Are they going to be a person that, the guys in the locker room can put their arms around and take care of? And is he going to listen? Is he going to come in with very little personality and develop one over time when, he starts to get a little bit more of a role in the team, whether it's as a vocal leader on the sideline or a guy who plays? But I know I've bounced around all over the place. Ideally, at the heart of it, we want great players, great people, incredible parents. When we find that trio, it usually bodes pretty well for us.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to hit on with you, because your approach is a little bit different, is you guys are generally a little bit slower in the recruiting process. You like to really see guys that summer going into their senior year and sometimes even beyond. I guess, what is the driver of that decision? Because you do it you do it on purpose. You're diligent about it. You do a ton of homework on these guys, and you do a great job of it. So what is it that leads you to believe that's the way to go?
You know what, man? We're insanely picky. Insanely picky. And I always use like a guy like Timmy Troutner as an example. Here's a guy that, went out into the world last year to the PLL and ends up, becoming one of the best goalies in the league as the rookie of the year. Mike would be like, Mike would always like fight for the Annapolis guys, man. He like loved the Annapolis guys, and I was all for it. But I was like, I don't know. And we went back and forth on Timmy like 3 or 4 times, probably told him no twice. And it wasn't until I think it was like May 15th of his senior year in high school when he was playing the MIA championship game that we finally offered him the opportunity to be our goalie. And a lot of things happened, from the fall, the summer to that point. It was a guy coming in, decommitting. Another guy got, picked off by another program. And we're sitting there at the 11th hour. And it was like, and I think part of the reason why it took us so long is we had a great goalie. We had Austin Geisler, who, in my opinion, was, played in the pros, was a transfer from Virginia, started here for 3 years, was a great leader, great person, and just a fantastic goalie. And so our standards were pretty high. We wanted to see somebody separate from the pack, and it took us a while to get there, but it's you want to see the whole body of work. As a player, you want to see the whole body of work. As a kid, you want to see the whole body of work in terms of their parents. And, we finally got to the decision to offer Timmy, ended up being one of the best ones we ever made as a program. So, yeah, there are those guys. I mean, we've had conversations. There's those guys that on day one, you fall in love with, and you're like, man, I'd love to get this guy. But most of the guys in our program are guys that, have a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder. We're passed up and always feel like they have something to prove. And most importantly, they listen. I mean, they listen and they allow themselves to be coached. Sometimes we coach them hard. Sometimes we put our arm around them. But they know at the end of the day, man, we're authentic. We love them. We care about them. And our end result, like you said before, it's growth. It's growth as a person. It's growth as a player. It's growth as a student. And it's always at the forefront. And I think what's neat, and I think you have this too, just from knowing you, is there's a personality that you take on the field, and there's a personality that you take on off the field. And the on-field personality is we've got 2 hours to get what we want accomplished. We don't have time to waste. We don't have time to do anything that's going to pull us in the opposite direction. So like out here, you're going to see someone that, follows a standard rule. And if you don't follow that, there's going to be consequences. Where in the office, I am always available to my guys, whether it's 2 a.m, whether it's 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, like they need me, I'm here for them, and I'm fortunate enough to have a wife and a family that allows me to welcome these guys into our, family and be a part of their lives, as much as they allow me to do. So, it's cool. It's all encompassing, and it's the only way I think you can run a program, honestly.
Yeah, I think I always look at those big wins, and you've had so many of them over the last few years, and that when you have a chip on your shoulder and you go into that Saturday game against Maryland or that Thursday night against a Duke or Virginia where you guys are winning, I'm always a big believer of like that chip on the shoulder comes in handy there when those guys are so fired up, but the energy is almost going to carry you to that win. And I think, again, the way you recruit allows those guys to do it. It kind of sets them up for success in those big games.
Yeah, no doubt.
Staying on that recruiting process, what are those 3 or 4 things when you get to a field, when you get to a tournament, whether it be this summer, the fall, whenever, the winter, what are those 3 or 4 things that you have to look for? So I think everyone thinks about, all right, we want the biggest, fastest, strongest kid that can shoot on the run really well. But what are those 3 or 4 intangibles that you're always looking for?
Yeah, I think it varies by position. But for us, I'd say like all encompassing, we want guys with a motor that just play incredibly hard, don't seem to get tired. We want guys that have, somewhat of a skill set with IQ built into that. And then you just love to see, it goes with the motor, but guys that are just competitive, and you look for that. You look for the guy that, at the end of the game wants the ball on his stick, or the guy defensively who wants to go out and attack his matchup, not just absorb his matchup. The goalie that gets fired up after a save, that points a guy out, that brings his defenseman in, a face-off guy that can, do a little bit more than just win a clamp, a guy that can, get off the field on defense or play a little bit of defense, do something offensively. But I think everybody falls in love with usually like the guys that start to play and the guys that finish the play. But, those are the guys that you tend to stand out a little bit more. We try to find those guys, but we also try to find those guys in between, and maybe those, special athletes for certain positions that just stand above the crowd, that can do something that other guys can't do, and, could develop it into something that maybe some other guys can't.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the consensus as we go through these is everyone's competitors. That's the biggest thing. It's like, you can tell when a kid has that competitive or that mean streak in them when there's a summer tournament that play makes where he's competitive, and then that carries through to spring practices. And we always say like that 30th practice of the season when everyone's tired, when you're a competitor and you're wired that way, it pays a ton of dividends, as you go through the length of the college season. The next part of the recruiting process is the financial piece. I think that's a huge black box for everyone, and parents kind of don't understand all the different pieces, and kids don't understand all the different pieces that go into the financial part of it. So there's the athletic scholarship, the academic scholarship, and the financial scholarship. I guess, can you talk about, the whole package and how you guys think about it at High Point, and then just leaning back on all the experiences you've had, and I guess what you would say to parents and kids about looking at the financial piece of playing college lacrosse?
Yeah, I think for me, like for the parents, keep the expectations low in terms of the amount of money that you're going to get, because there really isn't that much from a scholarship perspective when you're talking about the max being 12.6. Division II's got some scholarship, and Division III is going to be merit-based or institutional financial aid or financial aid based through the government. So there's not a ton of money. It varies. I mean, sometimes it's more geared towards a position. If we need a specific position, we'll put money into that position. I think most colleges would spend, the majority of their money on, I guess, first dodge options, guys that can finish, face-off guys, goalies, and then kind of go from there. But for us, it depends. I mean, there's situations where we've had kids in the office that, financially come from a really, and I think this is just like me as a person, I didn't come from a lot of money, and I tend to side with guys that are struggling and families that are struggling, or, might not have this opportunity if it wasn't for financials. And there's times where, there's a guy who maybe other programs would look at and say, I don't think this guy's worth a ton of money, but I know I want that guy in my program, and I don't want him leaving the office without him being here. And he might not be, our Division I first team All-American type player, but man, great locker room guy, a guy that's going to add some value. And sometimes, pulls at my heartstrings, and I just say, let's give this guy, an opportunity. There's guys in our program that, have done everything for this place over the course of, 3-4 years, that if money becomes available, which it tends to do in this sport, the finish line of the sport is not to, play in the NFL or the NHL and make millions of dollars. It's, to get a great job. So sometimes guys leave. When those guys leave and we have the opportunity to reward some guys that have been in the program that, might need it, we like to do that too. But, I think, it's kind of like the conversation we had before. Everything is different depending upon the school. Some schools can stack. They can give athletic dollar on top of institutional financial aid. They give athletic dollar on top of merit-based aid. But you're gonna find out when you start talking to schools very quickly. You want to ask that question: can you talk to us about the financials? And just know that, at least from our perspective, that conversation is always kind of like a work in progress. I tell people all the time, listen, if you lose your job or all of a sudden, you start to have some financial strife, like, give us a call. I'll do whatever I can to help you. If your son's, being a good person on the field, off the field, making good social decisions, doing what he needs to do academically, but there's tons of different scenarios that happen. There's a ton of different situations. There's a ton of different schools. There's all kinds of information out there that's false. There's all kinds of information out there that's true. But I think your answer on those things is going to come from that specific university. It's never going to be in a blanket statement. And always be weary of people that will tell you that their sons are getting these insane, athletic packages, because those tend to be the same people that wear their salary on the sweater at the office Christmas party. You always got to take what they say with a grain of salt.
It's just not there. That's why I think you and I always laugh. Like, we hear about this kid who has a full scholarship or half scholarship, and you're kind of like, where does that money come from? Because I think you hit it on the head from the athletic side. There's only 12.6 to split across 50 guys. So I'm with you that I get a kick out of. We hear it all the time in the club world about this kid who's got this insane offer from this school, and you're like, that school doesn't even have that many scholarships.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's all the time. I mean, it's funny, the stories you hear. I mean, and we could talk all night about, the different things that we've come across over the last couple of years with parents and kids and all kinds of situations. But yeah, there's a lot of falsehoods out there in terms of scholarship money. I would just say the best thing is, get the opportunity first. And if there's be pleasantly surprised at the end, because usually there isn't.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think the advice we always have for guys is don't expect it, but be grateful when it comes. The next part, so we go through the recruiting process. Finally, that kid goes through a financial process, and then he gets to campus. What is a day in the life like for a High Point lacrosse player? So when he wakes up, what does his morning look like? And we'll talk a Tuesday in season versus a Tuesday in fall ball. I guess what is a day in the life for a High Point lacrosse player?
Yeah, it's not going to look much different between the fall and the season. We do everything in the summer. We do everything in the morning. You're used to that. So we're up usually around, like, we're asking the guys to get to the locker room by like 6. We'll go out by 6:30. Sometimes we'll do film beforehand. Sometimes we'll do speed and agility. But we practice typically from like 6:30 to 9:30, or 6:30 to 9, or 7 to 9:30, 2.5, maybe 3 hours, depending upon the day. Sometimes it's even shorter. And then we'll lift usually 4 days a week in the fall in the afternoon, 3 days a week. As we get into the spring, we'll do community service with Big Brothers and Big Sisters once a week in the fall and during the season. And then we'll do community service projects typically on Saturday. We'll have speakers come into our team once or twice a week during the course of the fall. And other than that, we try to go in the fall, we'll go either 4 or 5 days a week. If we go the 5th day, it's usually a scrimmage on a Saturday. And then as we get into season, we'll go 6 days a week, but we typically give the guys Tuesday as a captain's practice, so they're out there by themselves. So that's kind of a day in the life. And then most of our guys will take classes between 9 and 3. And at a small private college, that's when most of the classes are anyway. So we typically, like, just by going in the morning, we don't run into a lot of class issues. I think it's a good way to kickstart the day. And it's, as man, it builds a bridge to the real world. So these guys are kind of ready to go when they, get out of here.
Yeah, I love it. We started, no, I'm with you. We started doing it, and I'm sure Bresh did it when you played for him. We started doing it when I was at Carolina, and it's a game changer because, like you said, everything, you feel so accomplished. By the time 9 o'clock rolls around, you've practiced, watched film, gotten a workout in, and the rest of the day is a cakewalk. And like you said, from the real world, that's what it is, because your day goes till 5:30 or 6 or 7.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's like we've tried to change it a couple of times, and the guys like kick back hard. They're like, no, we want to go in the morning. Like, and like a lot of it is culture change. It's, the reverse curfew type of thing. But it's not just reverse curfew for like social. It's reverse curfew for just sleeping habits, which are huge now. Everybody's talking about that stuff when they're talking about rest and recovery. It's, not eating a plate of wings, at midnight, you're in bed, you're making good decisions. And it's been, like you said, man, it's been a game changer for us. And just that's something that's, conveyed to recruits when they come here. We go in the mornings. It's funny, like usually like meeting a recruit at 5:30 in the morning, before practice, they're sitting there like, what the hell am I getting myself into? But, by like that 9 o'clock hour where they're, heading off to the dorms to eat breakfast with the guys, they're like, that was amazing. That was awesome. So
yeah,
been good for us.
Yeah, it's great. Like I said, I've always enjoyed it. What are the guys doing? So that's the schedule, but then you have a guy like an Asher Nolte or a Tim Troutner, one of these guys that has a ton of success. What are those guys doing differently? I mean, obviously they're doing all the team stuff, but how are those guys separating themselves, or what's allowing the guys to be the most successful when they're on campus?
Yeah, I think as well as I do. Practice will get you so far. The extra work will take you where you want to go. If you set your goals high. And so for us, I mean, one of the coolest things about our setup here is we are literally right across from the locker room where our offices are, and you stare out the window behind me, and you're looking at the field. So all day long, guys are out there. We've empowered our older guys to take younger guys, by the hand and go out there and do some extra work and impart some wisdom on those guys. And it's just part of our culture. So you'll watch practice and you'll watch guys go. The cafeteria, get a bite to eat, and then within an hour or two later, there's guys back on the field doing stuff. They're doing extra work. They're, not only working on their strengths, which I think a lot of guys are good at doing, but they're working on their weaknesses and taking the things that, might not be, maybe something they did in practice, maybe something that they struggle with. And we have such a great, if it was up to me, man, I'd take the door off the hinges in our offices, because we have such a great dynamic of just traffic flow in here all the time, with guys just popping in, asking questions. Our staff is all the time like shooting little videos to guys after practice and being like, what would you do here? What did you think about this? Little trivia questions to the guys. It's it's a culture built around a lot of extra work. And I think, when you look at the guys that have played in our program, again, you're looking at guys from maybe not so much the traditional powerhouses per se, that are becoming guys that are as good enough, to beat some of the better players in the country individually and collectively as a team. So that's due to a lot of time that they put in off the field. And I think one of the biggest issues, man, and you know what I'm talking about, you've got guys that commit fairly early that just start to hit the pause button and put things on coast. We've talked about that a lot in the past. And those guys get run over, man. They get run over when they get here. And some of those guys never rebound. Some of those guys, are given an opportunity to, pick themselves up by their bootstraps and get a second chance. But if you don't come into college with, a work ethic and a drive that was instilled and created over 2-3 years in high school, good luck, man. It's going to be a short career.
Yeah. But I've always, you always want to peak when you are, ideally you peak when you're in college, but generally it's that sophomore, junior, senior year is when you really start to hit your stride. I think that's where you guys have done such a good job of taking that kid who's not necessarily the best player on day one of practice his freshman year, but by the time he gets junior, senior, you have the Timmy Troutners of the world that really excel and are just only getting better at that point.
And I'll tell you what, man, we do get really good players from traditional hotbeds, but a lot of those guys, aren't like the guys you played with at Carolina. They're not 6'3", they're not 205 pounds. They might be, 5'9", 160, but do something really, really well. And so, like, we tell those guys, like, your skill, your IQ, your quickness, all those things are going to be strengths when you come in here, and you'll have an opportunity right away to probably touch the field. But when you got some 6'3", 225-pound kid from Houston, Texas, who, was never taught the game at the rate you were growing up, chasing you down, man, you better be working really hard. That guy's going to catch up to you. And it happens. And when that happens and the two kind of worlds collide, it's pretty freaking awesome to watch, man. It's competitive as hell.
Yeah, it's fun. It's the Ashtonoltes of the world, right? Who just were kind of under recruited, and then they're just so good as they get there and as they get into your system to develop them.
No doubt.
The other part of that is the younger lacrosse players. So I think the best way to always wrap this up is hearing your advice. So you've obviously had success professionally as a player, in college as a player, and then as a coach, you've seen it all, which we've talked about. So and you have kids and you're coaching, I know, at the younger level now. So what type of advice would you have for those 6th through 9th graders that one day hope to play at a high point and play at the highest level of college lacrosse and maybe professional lacrosse after that?
That's a great question, man. I mean, the most important piece of advice I can give is just listen. I mean, listen. I mean, if you're fortunate enough to play, for guys like yourself, and you're fortunate enough to play for some of these club programs that have fantastic coaches and guys that are truly, interested in helping you develop, listen to what they have to say. And I mean, as well as I do, man, when we were growing up, it wasn't, pop a thing on YouTube and watch 50 games. I mean, we were lucky if we had like a VHS copy of like the 97 Final Four that we burned out over 15 years and watching it 3,000 times. So just the access these kids have to just watching and trying to emulate it is so cool, and I think the thing that a lot of guys will go out and just do very simple basic fundamentals. But I say, like, do something that like challenges you every day that you might fail at, miserably a number of times. But when you get it, then it becomes that like addiction of like, all right, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And it's cool. I mean, and the more you can surround yourself with people that know what they're talking about, the more you can surround yourself with people that, truly care about your development, the better off you're going to be. I mean, I sent a note to our guys today, and I just said, how many of you guys do like lessons with a kid or work with a program, drop a little emoji in or WhatsApp if you do that? And I said, because it's incredible for not only the growth of the kids in that area to be able to work with someone like you, but it's also unbelievable for your growth as a coach, and I know you feel the same way, but every single time I'm out on the field, whether I'm working with, 6-year-olds or I'm working with, my son or my daughters, I'm learning something new and I'm figuring out a way to get that information to these people in the most simple, minute form that allows them to play at the highest level as quickly as they possibly can. And so for me, like, I love it. And I get like addicted to going out there and coaching these guys to the point where we might have a practice at 6:30 in the morning. We watch the guys lift from 4 to 5, and then we're out on the field again, my wife hates it, but like we're out on the field again from like 6 to 9, like coaching kids. And I'm like, you're getting energy off of it. It's awesome. And, I've watched 2 of my players just come in twice a week, freshmen, great kids. They picked up on a lot of stuff we did last year, and they work with my son, twice a week. And, watching him out the window, I'm like, this is incredible. And he's getting better. And it's really cool to see. Now he won't listen to me, but he'll listen to them. So it's like, I'm like, somebody's got to get this information to him.
Yeah, they're delivering the same thing that you said a couple hours earlier, just putting it in a different way.
No doubt, man.
Now, Coach, I really appreciate it. I think, like you said, a lot of things that we definitely share in common, and the joy of coaching every guy, from a little guy to an older guy, and watching that process. And it's been really fun to watch you do it at High Point. From, I think, the day you got there was right around the first day I got down to Charlotte. It's been fun to see all your success. So hopefully we can do it for a bunch more years.
Yeah, vice versa, man. It's been great watching you guys grow. And, I mean, you're doing amazing things down there. I mean, to, be fortunate enough to have some of the guys in your program coming here has been great. And, it's been a cool little partnership we got going on.
No, thanks a lot, Coach. Well, hopefully we're back on the field soon, and we'll hopefully we're on the recruiting field, or it could be with the little guys here in the next couple of weeks.
Amen, man. I'm in. Let me know if you want me to come down and hang out, Coach.
I'll see you soon, Coach. Yep.
All right. See you, buddy.